All right. Boy, we got a lot of people already watching. That's good. So you guys don't have anything? You want to go ahead and get started? Boy, we got a lot of people already watching.
There's a
That's good. So
yeah,
is there
sure.
a delay?
I think somebody's listening to it.
Oh,
I turned
okay.
that,
Okay.
that was my iPad. I turned it down.
Easy there, buddy.
All right. Well, here we go. That's easy. No big news to report. So here we go. All right, all right. The Bite Me podcast is on the air June 20th, 2023. Big day for us. Big day because we have all three of our captains, our regular captains, on the podcast today. That would be Caleb McCumber, Captain Caleb McCumber, Captain Scott Knoll, Captain Dean Thomas, and myself, John Lopez, here for you with a jam-packed show for you. Of course, quick reminders, then a big announcement. Quick reminders, don't forget to join us if you're joining us for the first time. On the group page. That's just search Bite Me Fishing, and you'll be good to go. You'll find the group page. Just remember to click Remember to click I agree when you go through the little thing, and then we'll get you right in. Also, you can subscribe pretty much anywhere you get a podcast: iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere. All right, boys. Oh, by the way, real quick message here from City Angler, I believe, is what City Life Angler. Do you know how I can message John in private regarding something personal to him? You can message me via the group page, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Lopez on Sports or John Lopez, or shoot me an email. I don't care. I mean, I'll put my email out there. Highly touted at Gmail. Highly touted at gmail.com.
Put your phone number on there.
Yeah.
Okay, everything but the phone number.
I'll go ahead and put his phone
everything
number
but the phone number.
He don't answer it anyway, City Angler. Don't worry about that.
No, I don't answer you. No, I'm just kidding. I do. All right, boys, let's get to it. We're going to cover Hurricane Bret. Not necessarily that it's going to be threatening us, but what it means, because it's we'll get to the details on that. It's formed in normally cooler water and earlier than expected, and what that means, because there's some history that would be on the side. We were just talking about hurricanes last week. We're going to have some favorite dog stories, and I need it. Dog-related fishing stories. I know my guys across the way have those. I need a little pick-me-up. I'll get to that when we get to that part of the topic. How fish are affected, which fish, which species are affected the most by the warming temperatures. Boat building success stories. We're going to visit with Chet Moore over at Freedom Boats. And, of course, there's something wild going on in the Gulf that I know Scott is hot about. We'll get to that, about restricting speeds in the Gulf. But let's not bury the lead. Big announcement here. We've teased it on the Facebook group page, and really, really excited about this. We're going to have, and the big upset is Captain Caleb, Captain Dean, and Captain, who did I miss? Scott, are all going to be there. We're all going to be there on the same date, and that is August 12th, 2023. We are going to have what we're calling the Bite Me Podcast Feeding Frenzy, and it's going to be at Watson's House of Ales. That's up on I-10 and I believe 99, maybe the Beltway. It's a really cool place. They are locked in. I'll get some details here, then some reactions, some other thoughts from the fellas, but put it on your calendar right now. And once this podcast posts, Roy Crush from Texas Boys Outdoors, he's been on the podcast, is going to post something on the Facebook, and that's how I think we're going to get all the RSVPs, so we'll have a good head count. But here's the deal. It's going to be, we didn't want to do anything for our listeners unless it was big, it was bold, and it benefited somebody. And it's benefiting Texas Boys Outdoors. Tentatively, and stay tuned on that, we're looking at 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday, August 12th at Watson's House of Ales. And we're gonna buy your food. We're gonna cover your food. If you want to RSVP, the drinks are on your own. I don't need that liability. I don't think anybody does. You're on your own on drinks, but we're gonna buy the food. The menu is gonna be outstanding. I'm guessing some sort of boil, crawfish or shrimp. Crawfish are still in season in August, aren't they? I think so, right?
No,
Aren't
sir.
they? No, probably shrimp then.
Shrimp
all
are.
kinds of other food, and it's going to be a big event. We're going to have all kinds of stuff for our listeners. We're going to be doing door prizes. We're going to be doing auction items benefiting Texas Boys Outdoors, and we couldn't do it without all our partners. And I know there's going to be more to come, but this is just after the very first email. I sent one email out last week, and all these partners and friends of ours just jumped in at the opportunity to be a part of the Bite Me community and to be a part of what we're doing for Texas Boys Outdoors. The Boatyard is in to sponsor, and they're going to bring a couple of boats to show off at the event. Freedom Boats is in to sponsor the food. Wade Wright is in to sponsor the food, and they're also donating a couple of Madre slings. Fishing Tackle Unlimited, our presenting sponsor, you knew that we could count on them. They're in to help sponsor the food, and they're donating 2 green rods that we're either going to silent auction or door prize. CCA Texas, how about that? Shane Bonneau is in to help sponsor. Knock and Tail, unfortunately, he's going to be on vacation, but he wanted to be a part of it. Micah Krolik, our guy over there, is going to be donating gift bags with all kinds of lures. Lose Reels. I think we're going to have 6 Lose Reels that we're going to be giving away to, whether it's door prizes or whatever, every half hour while we're there. Strike King is coming in. Down South Lures is coming in. South Jetty Cooler is coming in with some raffle items. Saltwater Soul, Power Pole. I'm telling you, it's humbling. It's awesome. It's really cool how big the Bite Me podcast has gotten. And this is going to be a big event, August 12th, tentatively 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And it's going to be benefiting Texas Boys Outdoors. We want all of our Bite Me listeners, whether you're listening on the podcast or listening live on the YouTube channel, to be a part of this. It's going to be awesome. And I'm just going to share a quick story here, and then I'm going to kind of toss it to the boys for their thoughts, some things they might think about in terms of, we're going to have, I'm sure we're going to have some sort of, not necessarily a formal seminar. It's going to be just kind of a hang. You can get stuff autographed by Caleb and Dean and Scott or myself. And don't snicker, Dean. People want your autograph. You're a legend. That was Dean snickering right there. Scott, Caleb, I know you guys have signed autographs at some of the seminars we've done, maybe a poll, whatever. But I'm going to share a story real quick. And I was talking to Roy Crush over at Texas Boys, and he was telling me about, some of the things they do. It benefits first responders, veterans, and people in need on a personal level. So he was saying, well, this is one that I'm doing on Wednesday, tomorrow, or today if you're listening on the podcast. A 15-year-old boy, he's been battling a very, very rare form of cancer. He lost his father to cancer a few years ago, and his grandfather. His grandfather, who is also coming on the trip, is fighting cancer now as well. So he's got his grandfather himself. He lost his father, and so they've got a trip with Texas Boys Outdoor and Roy Crush, and he's bringing them both, a friend of theirs. And so this is what they do. This is how they benefit the community and first responders and such. And so I'm really, really excited. I'm going to start with Scott, because Scott and I, we started this podcast literally standing by the back of your truck. Hey, what if we did a podcast? And now we have almost damn near 9,000 people on the group page, 490,000 downloads we're expecting this year on the podcast. And I said it, Scott, it's humbling, but to be able to do things like this, get the guys and girls together that listen to the podcast, and to be able to do it for a great organization like Texas Boys Outdoors. I mean, I'm not trying to get too hokey here or anything, but it's pretty dang awesome, Scott.
Who would have thunk it? I mean, when we started this thing, we were looking at it going, if we get 500 people a week listening into this thing, that would be pretty cool. And had no idea it was going to grow like this. Just watching the numbers click by it's been pretty impressive and pretty damn cool, actually. Didn't think that many people would want to stop and listen to us talk about fishing. But
Me and
being
Dean
able,
were sure that
and,
people would listen when we showed up.
Yeah, you can see when me and Caleb tune in how the numbers dramatically rise.
Yeah, it's incredible.
they do. They do. Y'all are the I would say Ringo and George.
I
And
haven't been
Scott and I are
giving
Lennon
myself
and
enough credit
McCartney.
lately.
I guess Caleb would be Ringo if I had to guess. He's the wild child.
I'm only old enough for Johnny Ringo, dude.
Delaney text, never knew you guys would start a cult, did you? No, we didn't. And definitely going to be a cool party, as Glenn said. Certainly, it's something, and this is the point in time where I'm gonna shame Caleb into asking him, what are you bringing? You heard everything that all our other partners are bringing. What are you going to bring for some of these fundraising ideas?
Typically, when I'm on Fremont Street, I charge $5 for pictures with me, but here they're free.
They're free here. They're absolutely free here.
I'll figure it out.
And how about Dean coming in all the way from Aransas Pass? You're going to be there August 12th. All four of us will be there. We'll be talking fishing, and I know you're going to have some cool stories for everybody. But it's just a cool event, and I'm glad we could do it, Dean.
Well, first of all, I only sign girls' boobies.
Hey, we're gonna have a bunch. We're gonna have a
there
bunch
you
of
go,
pairs.
Delaney.
We're gonna have...
Delaney just put gas in the car.
I got to meet this Delaney, man. Y'all give her such a hard time. It's crazy.
You'll
She's a
understand
loyal
so much
listener.
when you meet her.
I'll understand.
Mhm.
Well, so that's cool. So put it on your calendar right now. When this podcast gets edited and posted this evening, you're going to be able to see the group page, and we'll put it. I mean, on the group page, we'll put the post from Roy Crush on there, and we'll get rolling. And we got your food covered, man. Thanks to all our partners. We're going to have cool gear. We're going to have giveaways. It's not just going to be auction items. We're going to have giveaways, and we're going to talk a hell of a lot of fishing. So I've been wanting to do this for a long time. It is here, and it's going to be way cool. All right, so let's get into some topics here. And not to just lean everything towards Scott, but this is something that is right in his wheelhouse as well. So, Scott, I'll start with you. So Hurricane Bret has formed. Obviously, it's early, and I know it's not headed to Houston, to the Gulf area per se, but I'm going to read something that Travis Herzog, a good Aggie over at Channel 13 here in Houston, posted recently. And I'm just going to read it, and I want you guys, starting with Scott, to tell me what you think it means for the season, so to speak. Tropical Storm Bret has formed in the deep tropics, well east of the Caribbean. It is highly unusual for a storm to form this far out in the Atlantic at this time of year, because normally the waters are still too cool to support development. This year, it's a different story, with water already as warm as it typically is the first week of September. Hurricane Bret is expected to become to reach the Caribbean, and there's only one other hurricane on record to form east of the Caribbean in June. That hurricane occurred in 1933, and it went on to become, and this is the key part for me anyway, to become the most active hurricane season on record in the pre-satellite era. So, Scott, just give me your thoughts, because all signs are that, okay, Bret maybe not coming to the Gulf area, but we're going to have us some hurricanes if history holds true.
Yeah, it's a tropical storm right now. It's got a lot to go against it. There's a whole bunch of upper level winds that are going to shear it for several days, so it's not real favorable for it to improve its disposition there. But yeah, it is kind of weird, because those are usually August, September hurricanes at Cape Verde. Ones that come off of Africa don't usually form up. We get waves, and then they come in. They kind of piddle around in the tropics a little bit, and then they kind of fizzle out. Most of what we get, early in the season forms up more in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean is where it kicks off. So I don't know, man. It's kind of hard to say. We've had some weird weather. I mean, all those big storms down south, they've been having these 60, 70 mile an hour blasting storms coming through Padre. Seems like every other week or so. Man, just weird weather all the way around. So, I mean, it's set up supposedly with the El Nino or La Nina or whichever one that is over in the Pacific, it's supposed to, whichever one it's supposed to be the one where we're in a down cycle. But that says we're in a down cycle, but we're also super warm. I mean, everything's really hot. I had a guy tell me he was in the backwaters of some marshes this week over in Galveston. It was 93 degrees in the marsh. So, I mean, just the marsh waters are heating up, but the deep Gulf water's hot. I've been looking at some of the overlays for water temperatures out there. Lots of oranges, lots of yellows out there when it probably shouldn't be this early. So warm water creates storms. You know, it feeds them. So we got to keep an eye out on this.
Yeah, and Dean, you kind of caught the wrath of Scott last week because you talked about hurricanes can be good. And so if you want to expand on that and just your thoughts in general on what's happening out there in the Pacific.
Well, I mean, it can be good for fishing because it pushes in a lot of fresh water, creates a lot of clouds, cools things off. It just mixes up the atmosphere. But, you know, we got hit ground zero with Hurricane Harvey, and everybody gets nervous. Everybody starts looking at them. Hurricanes and storms and stuff, I mean, they come and go. We've lived with them forever. The eye wall in the eye of those storms is just where you don't want to be. I mean, it is very unfortunate what we went through here, but that stuff mixes up the heat of summer and it creates some great fishing when it pushes them in. So as long as you're not, even as bad as Hurricane Harvey was, from Aransas Pass to Rockport and Port Aransas, devastated. Looked like a bulldozer ran over the earth. Every square inch was destroyed. But as close as Ingleside is, you could see Ingleside from my house. They were not in the eye wall. Corpus Christi was not. So it's good to be aware, but it's frightening to everybody. But as long as they're category 1, 2, fast moving storms, I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do, but everybody dreads the big one. And I mean, I lived through the big one, and man, that was horrible. But you know, on the flip side of that, it does mix up the weather. It mixes up the water. It creates some great fishing. And I said it before, you know, what's unfortunate for my neighbors in the Gulf when it's hitting elsewhere. I mean, if you want to look at the fishing side of things, it does bring fresh water. It drops those temperatures. It spawns rain. So it is the one thing that offsets the heat of summer.
And Caleb, I know you were commenting here on the YouTube live about you like the drier air from it. If you miss the brunt of a hurricane, what has been your experience that happens to the bays in the Gulf?
It did. Like Dean said, it makes it a lot better. I would like to add that I really don't care what Herzog has to say, but my lawnmower repairman told me it was going to be an active year. And folks that work on stuff that cuts grass.
What's your lawnmower repairman's name?
Oh, that's Cousin Eddie.
Cousin Eddie, and where did he go to meteorological school?
Well, Lamar High School, baby. Hey, a fishing guy can tell you when it's about to rain, and a guy that fixes lawnmower blades can tell you, or hey, chainsaws. He's a chainsaw repairman too. He knows this is coming. Yeah. But like Dean said, if it's around us, it's great. But you know, Harvey, there's back lakes that still haven't been the same because we have all these rivers up here, and those rivers will get miles wide and just wipe those things out. And it took years and years for the back lakes that Harvey flooded out to get back to even decent, and they're just now getting good. But yeah, I do like the drier air and the green rivers and back lakes right now from the lack of rain and the heat, though.
Yeah, that's what you were talking about. But the other thing, Scott, and this is another topic that I got a question on. The question was about until further notice, until there is a washing, so to speak, from a hurricane, nearby hurricane, Are there any species of fish that are affected more by these stifling water temperatures, and how do you adjust? And then I'll just lay back because I want to hear them more. I'm sure listeners do too from you three guys. So I'm just going to go Scott, Dean, and then Caleb on this one. The stifling water temps, are there any species that are affected more than others, and how do you adjust?
Well, trout seem to be affected more by the hot water. They're going to drop off first. They'll be up there early in the morning, way before, as it's getting daylight. You might find some up shallow. The redfish, they'll stick around a little longer. And redfish, I've seen them up there on the flats when it's 100 degrees. It doesn't really seem to make them uncomfortable enough to leave, but they don't really act right. The oxygen level drops because of the lack. All the heat drops the oxygen levels in the water, and just the saturated oxygen can't be there when the water gets that hot, and the fish just kind of shut down. They kind of go to sleep. See it every year when it gets hot, July and August. I can go along in the back lakes and on the grass flats, find redfish that are laying there and cast at them and nothing happens. Then poke them with a push pole or poke them with a rod tip, and they might move. They'll, for the most part, they'll just kind of lay there and kind of wobble back and forth. Almost looks like they're dead. But they're just waiting on it to cool off and get a little more oxygen and get going again. If you do happen to catch one, you'll notice they don't fight. They just kind of give up. It's like reeling in a wet rag. So, yeah, the heat definitely affects everything that goes up shallow.
Go ahead,
I
Dean.
forgot the rotation. Whose turn is it now?
It's a short-term memory loss. I can relate. Trust me on that. It's you.
I need a little post-it note. But I've experienced that this week. We've been in this crazy heat wave for many days now. I fished the last 8 days in a row, and it has been it's like mid-August out there right now. The heat is crazy. So we've drifted the flats. We've drifted a lot of shallows, but it's been very windy with this heat. So wind with heat is better than no wind with the heat. So it moves the boat. We've been covering a lot of area, and those fish on the flats are very lethargic. Early morning, it's been tough for me. So yesterday, completely shifted gears. I just avoided the shallow flats in the morning and went straight to deeper water. But we had lighter winds yesterday that allowed me to fish the edges, and we weren't wade fishing. We were in the boat, so you can control where you want to be and how you cast a little better with less wind. And we had nonstop speckled trout action for like 4 hours, but it was hanging around the edges of drains and places where I park my boat on the sandbar and cast into 4 feet of water. Or if I was fishing on the windy shorelines, I could put my pole down and cast towards the drop off and work it back out towards the deep water. But that's, I think, until something changes, I will be focusing my attention on deeper water. From what I've seen in the flats, was kind of hard-headed this week, kept just stuck with it, trying to prove that I could find some redfish on the flats. But even the mullet, so the surface is just devoid of life. There's no jumping mullet. You don't see a lot of swirls. You don't see the obvious signs. You get to like 10, 11 o'clock when the sun is overhead and you can see in the water. You drift over the sand holes and you see all those mullet come out of those holes. They're there, but they're just, everything's in slow motion in the shallows. I've had water temperature up to 89 degrees on the flats this week, 82 at the crack of dawn. So everything gets lethargic. Fish don't eat as much. They don't eat as often. And that's just the rhythm of that. So I'm sure I'm going to be focusing my attention after what I saw yesterday. Tomorrow morning I'm headed, straight to 4 and 6 feet of water. Probably going to be wading tomorrow, just hitting those edges as much as possible. The flats are just tough right now, the ultra shallow.
Well, those two guys pretty well said it all. So I'll kind of go to a different point here. When you're dealing with shallow water to deep water, there is 2 tipping points a year whenever it's wintertime, there's a certain amount of time where the water in the middle is warmer than the water on the edge, and you're going to find a lot of your fish in the middle. And then as the summer, spring, and summer rolls around, you're going to hit another tipping point to where the water on the middle is cooler than the water on the edge. And when you're planning out your fishing in the seasons, it's good to think about that, and when you're trying to decipher where you're going to start at for the day.
And so trout, you've been a big time trout fisherman as well. What about that aspect of it? I know you talk about the deeper, areas and all that, but what about behavior and the question of how you adjust?
From what I've seen and taken in, and then whenever I was down there last week, it was the guys out in the middle drifting the deeper stuff were doing a lot better, and the guys up on the edge, we didn't do so well. And that has a lot to do with the water's hot, and it was kind of rather stagnant the couple of days I was there, just because of lack of tide movement. But and that's where you're going to get, like Scott said, early in the morning, and really, late in the evening, kind of. If you're near the drop off at night, you'll catch them up on the flat. But they're getting to the point now, when that sun hits them. For years, I made 100% of my summertime living sight casting on the edge of deeper water, and at 10 o'clock every morning, until 10 o'clock, those fish were reliable as they could be, just cruising, and we caught a bunch of them. And then about 10 o'clock, they were all gone. And what I started to notice is when the sun came up enough that the bank was no longer casting a shadow on the water and the sun was on them, that was their cue to slide off. So and I could go to the other side, and it could be 8 a.m. and there wouldn't be a single fish over there with that sun shining on it, but in those shadier spots. And that's where I started kind of figuring out the pattern of when that sun comes up and starts getting on those fish, they start getting deeper.
Well, that's good information right there that I know a lot of our listeners are gonna appreciate. All right, so I want to get to something that a lot of our listeners have reached out and talked to me about, but I want to make it more fun. I need a pick me up. For those who don't know, I had my guy Gibson. Literally every single podcast I've ever done, he's been sitting right down there, right in front of me at my feet. He was going on 14 years old. We finally made the decision that we had to say goodbye, and all the usual emotions came into play. And I appreciate everybody reaching out. It was very, very difficult, and very, 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 very much something, leaving an emptiness. But I know Scott and I have talked about this off air, and I'm like, I'm not going to wallow right now. I'll wallow by myself, and I have. I've had my crying fits already. But one thing about Gibson was, like, he loved fishing, or just going down there. He loved steak night, because whenever we went to the kennel, as we called it, we have that travel trailer, and Scott and Caleb have seen it. There's big letters on the wall of my kennel, and Dean will see it soon enough. My wife and my kids always call it the kennel, because it was always Gibson and I going down there. So it was our big kennel. He loved steak night, because we always went down there. He was just amazing as can be. Never left my side. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do the poor me thing. I'll do that by myself. But I want to hear some dog stories from you guys. All of you guys have had dogs, some dog fishing stories. And I'll start it off with Gibson, because this is my funniest fishing story with Gibson. And it was back when he would go with me. The last couple of years he couldn't go with me. So we were in Sabine, and I trained him so well. He was like so well trained. I had water on the boat, and I would, keep him, comfortable there, and he would have a good time roaming everywhere. But every time we got near a shoreline, he wanted to jump in the water and go to the shoreline. But I trained him to not go until I said, "Okay, you can go." Literally those words, "Okay, you can go." And it was driving him nuts. And so dozens of times I would be fishing shorelines, and he'd just be waiting, just chomping at the bit to jump into the water and go to the beach. And he never did. But one day we were in Sabine, and I was cruising a shoreline. Look at Luna. I was cruising a shoreline with my trolling motor, and he was just dying. I could tell he was dying. He was dying to jump in. And I was catching some fish. And so, of course, I wasn't going to let him jump in. We were just cruising along nice and slow. He's slapping on the water, and his jaw would start trembling whenever he really got excited and wanted to jump in. And so a little alligator, about a 4-foot alligator, kind of, squirreled out of the grass. and there was no, I ain't waiting. I mean, he was not waiting any. He jumped in after an alligator in the water in Sabine. And of course, I put the power pole down, or I think I had him in Coda then. I put the pole down and I just like jumped in the water. And the things you do for your dog, I like literally got between him and the alligator, turned my back on the alligator, scooped him up, put him back on the boat. And then, of course, all the fish are gone. We're not catching anything. And I'm soaking wet head to toe because I got wet all the way to the top. And I was like, Gibson. And he just looked at me like, man, I couldn't help myself. There was a gator down there. I'm sorry. I know you say no. I know I don't go until you say go, but I couldn't help myself on that. But I know we all have good dog fishing stories. Looking forward to seeing what the comments are here live. Caleb, the most famous dog outside of Gibson is Steve in the greater Houston area. What's your best favorite Steve fishing? There's Steve right there. Your best favorite Steve fishing story.
Man, I got two of them, and they both have the same ending, believe it or not. When Steve was probably about a year or two old, Daniel and I take off and we go to Louisiana. We're in Houma, and there's a camp down there that about every pro red fisherman knows, named Mr. Jimmy. Mr. Jimmy owns this camp. And what's famous about it is there's like 7,000 cats here. He has a shrimping operation. So these cats, you won't see a one of them, but when that shrimp net starts moving, it's just like there's one with 3 legs, there's one with 1 ear, there's one with no tail. And these are like some these are street cred cats. And so anyway, we've been down there fishing a couple of days. My buddy's in Venice. He calls me up and he says, man, you got to get down here. Come on. All right, cool. It's like 10 o'clock at night. And so we throw everything in the vehicle and off we go. We get about 15 miles down the road, and I look at Daniel. I was like, hey, you got Steve? And he goes, no, I thought you had him. I was like, oh, hell, I don't have him. And I'm worried about it because I'm like, man, he chased us down the road, no telling where he's at. So we turn around, we drive all the way back like 50 miles an hour, watching for him on the road, in the ditch, whatever. And we get there, and this is a trailer house, and it's up on, it's got to be about 20-foot stilts, right? And it's got a porch around it with a little kickboard. And we pull up, and I'll look up on the porch, and I just see these 2 ears pop up. And Daniel still makes fun of me because I rolled down the window. I rolled down the window. I said, you coming or not? And man, he come down the stairs and jumped in. The cats hadn't ate him. So we were pretty happy about that. And fast forward about a year later, me and Robert Jones were fishing around the Matagorda complex. And we're on our way back, and the locks are closed. And so I slide my boat over to the edge and power pole down, and we sit there in one of these locks like 30 minutes, right? Locks finally open. We go back to the ramp, about to put in the harbor. I'm looking around like, where's Steve at?
Oh, no.
Robert looks at, I don't know. All right. So we turn and we head back down the intercoastal. And the saltgrass is sticking up, and you see a white head on the top of a red life jacket looking at us out of the grass like, what the hell, dude?
You left me.
Yeah. He had hopped out on the grass, and I didn't pay attention. The lock's open. I went. What the hell, man?
God, get arrested for that.
So that's the famous line. Most people that know that story, whenever they try to call Steve, they don't say come here. They say, you coming or what? And he'll come.
Yeah. Dean, how about you? I need to pick me up.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had to fight alligators for Luna, but I guess I would. Never left her once, much less twice on the side of the road and the river. But I mean, Luna is 11 years old now, and she has not left my side. She's fished. She loves to go on the boat. She's always out there. Crazy thing about Luna is when you're casting, she's sitting there staring at the water. She cannot wait for the next fish to come in the boat. But as soon as that fish hits the boat, she has no interest. It's done. She wants another fish and another one. But Luna goes out. She loves to explore. Yeah, it's amazing how much love. It's just pure love. The thing about dogs, they never have a bad day. There is no such thing as coming home and, they're always just pure love and ready to go. We go out to the shorelines. We run. I mean, she just loves the boat. It's hard to imagine what it'd be like, without her sitting there looking at me. And every day, when I take off in the morning, every morning she gets up 4 o'clock and we walk around here, do our thing. And then, you know, she looks at me, are we going? And
Am
I
I
just
getting
tell
to
her,
go this time?
and, you know, I tell her, and I always tell her, it's like, I'll be back. And then she knows that's the clue to, today's not her day to fish. But, yeah, she's been by my side, from, you know, a little baby puppy. She was out on the boat, and still to this day, whenever she jumps in that truck, man, we head down to the marina, and she can't wait to get on that boat.
Scott.
Yeah, you know, Charlie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she was the same way. She was on my boat. I got her from the Houston Fishing Show, and she was 6 weeks old, and I was a sales rep at the time. I was working everything from South Padre to Mississippi along Interstate 10 all the way over. And the next day after the fishing show, she jumped in the truck with me, and off we went. We were gone for a solid week, and we kind of bonded during that week. You know, she rode in the passenger seat, and she got to know every store, every fishing tackle shop, every hunting shop up and down the entire coast, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. And there was certain owners, you know, most of the time I'd leave her in the truck, and I'd have her, you know, sit back there, and, you know, she'd be in a kennel. But I had owners of the different shops that would go, "Where's your dog?" And I said, "She's in the truck. Bring her in here." Alton was one of the main ones there in Rockport. He was always, "Bring your dog in here." So Charlie sat in on many sales meetings, and
she probably helped close the deal.
Dude, she was so cool about it. She was just so laid back and easygoing, and they all loved to see her. And yeah, I lost her right after I screwed my shoulder up last year, and so they did me a little paw print thing at the vet.
Yeah, I'm getting one of those.
Well, you know how yellow lab shed, because you had one.
Yeah.
Well, when I got this back with the paw print, there's lab hairs.
That's awesome.
All inside the clay.
That's awesome.
There's a whole bunch of them. I just started laughing about it when I picked it up. I looked at it. I saw all those hairs all stuck in that clay amongst her footprint. I'm like, "Oh, that's about right."
Yeah.
And there was probably 15 pounds of hair in my truck, up under the seats, everywhere. But fishing wise, man, she was on the boat from the time she was 6 weeks old on, and she could spot redfish underwater. You know, I mean, she knew what tails were. She'd get excited on tails. She'd start bouncing, you know, on the front end of the boat. And I'd always have to tell her, I'd say, "Just settle down, settle down, settle down, settle down." And she'd be bouncing, and it's just this little bounce. And she'd get closer and closer to the edge. I said, back up. And inevitably she would fall off. Her front feet, she just couldn't stand it anymore. She'd be bouncing, and she'd just fall straight into the water head first. And for a lab, she didn't like to swim. She hated to swim.
Loved it. Gibson loved it.
As long as she could touch bottom, everything was cool. If she fell in somewhere she couldn't touch bottom, it sucked. And she'd freak out. And I had to pull her in many times, you know, because when you were fighting a fish, she'd do the same thing. She'd start bouncing, and she'd be standing next to you or between your legs. She'd be bouncing. And next thing you know, there goes Charlie. She's in the water. Biggest redfish I ever caught was in Louisiana on the fly. It was pushing 40 pounds. And she was standing there, and she was watching these reds roll, and she was getting excited. And when I made my cast, she got real excited. And I hooked up, and she was losing her mind. I've got a 40-pound redfish on the fly, holding it in one hand, and I'm trying to fish a dog out of the water with my left hand. And I got the whole thing on video somewhere of me dragging her back into the boat and her shaking and throwing water all over the place. But yeah, she was a cool water dog, man. She loved dolphins. You know, the bottlenose dolphins. She'd talk to them. She'd bark at them. They'd holler back at her, especially the ones in Louisiana in the shallow water. They'd swim all around the boat and poke their heads out and look at her and talk to her. They had their own little thing going on. I don't know what the hell they were talking about, but yeah, she was a lot of fun. She screwed up many of my.
Gibson did, just that one especially. I was like, oh my gosh! But
well, I would always take her. I'd take her when I wasn't when I didn't have customers, and a lot of times I'd bring my camera. You know, I'm trying to get photos of tailing reds or whatever. And I got this huge school of tailing reds, and I'm creeping up on it, and she's laying down, she's watching, she's whimpering. And I got the whole thing on video somewhere of me dragging her back into the boat and her shaking and throwing water all over the place. But yeah, she was a cool water dog, man. She loved dolphins. You know, the bottlenose dolphins. She'd talk to them. She'd bark at them. They'd swim all around the boat and And I'm getting closer and getting closer. I'm like, all right, I got the sun right. I can get a good picture here. And I start to get a picture, and all of a sudden she just bails off the front end and runs out into the middle of them. And I got a picture of her standing in the middle of this big muddy area where about 100 redfish had been in 6 inches of water. And she's just standing there looking around like, I don't know what happened to them, man.
Why'd they
here
leave?
a minute ago.
Yeah, why'd they leave?
It's a
Go ahead,
great
Caleb.
shot.
I've got dunes of yellow lab hair in my house. You have to vacuum it every day. If you don't, day 2, there's wads of that stuff.
Yep.
But
Yep.
Steve, much like Charlie, did his first week of growing up at the fishing show. And Scott and I both enjoyed it quite a bit because every one of them bikini Instagram fisher girls that at some point, Steve smelled like flowers and had glitter all over him by the end of the day. I'd walk over, I'd be walking around, go to Scott's booth and just see some girl that I'd never met in my life carrying my puppy around. I'd go and Scott, we go entire days without seeing him except when he passed us every now and again. And it.
Yeah, he always had a little grin on his face too.
Yeah, I guess he did. Gibson's thing wasn't the hop, and his jaw would just like he'd just be like I could just be shaking like this, like I'm about to go. So no, you're not, and he never did until he saw an alligator, and then he wanted to play. That's what I needed. I appreciate that. I know some of our listeners, especially when this posts on the group page, are going to have their. But dogs, man, dogs and fishing just go together. Whether it's the guy or the girl or whatever, you got to have a dog. I want to share this success story real quick. Meant to get to it last week on boat building and how this Chet Morampudi has built an absolute monster, and he actually invites our listeners, and I think that's important, to stop by anytime and just see how the boats are built. It's a fascinating thing, and I think you guys are going to like it. All right, so we go from that to I know Scott, this and myself. I'm not excluding myself. I'm going to call up the email here, but you sent me this link regarding restricting speeds in the Gulf of Mexico. This is from CCA, our guy Shane Bonneau. I'm sure it has some opinions on this, and you can talk to him about it at the Bite Me Feeding Frenzy at Watson's House of Ale on August 12th. We'll get to more details on that in just a second. But so apparently a bunch of environmental groups have petitioned NOAA Fisheries to establish a year-round 11-mile-per-hour speed limit for all boats traveling in the Rice's Whale Core distribution area. I'm not going to get into all the minutia here, but basically some of the things that they're suggesting for the sake of the Rice's whale mortality rate, which who knows if that's even true. A lot of people say it's not, including the CCA. No vessel transits at night. Vessels transiting through the zone must report their plans to the NOAA Fisheries, utilize trained visual observers, and maintain a separation distance of 500 meters from the Rice's whales. Use and operate an automatic identification system or notify NOAA Fisheries of transits through the zone and report all non-compliance to NOAA Fisheries within 24 hours. Scott, I am going to ask you a loaded question. I usually like to leave it open-ended just to get your opinion, but my loaded question is, we're all advocates of the fisheries in which we play, but come on. I mean, yeah. Come on, 11 miles an hour in the Gulf.
Yeah, man, I don't even know what to say about this. I saw it. I had to send it to you. It just blew my mind. It's not going to affect us here. You know, I mean, I looked it up. There's 51 of these whales, according to their counts, and they're like one of the most endangered species around for whales. They all are in the northeast Gulf of Mexico, so kind of like the Panhandle of Florida, Alabama, that area, I guess. I don't know what their area would be that they set up. You know, is this mandatory zone? But from what I've read, there's never been a reporting of a boat strike on any of these whales. And so it's like, okay, well, why are we doing this? You know, if there's never been any incidents, I could understand if it was happening, you know, like it was with the manatees, where people were running over manatees on the regular in Florida.
Yeah.
yeah, that made sense. But this doesn't make any sense at all. There's never been a problem. So why are we trying to fix something that ain't broke?
Go ahead, Dean.
Well, don't get me started on government overreach.
Yeah. And it's the thing is, like I said, we are all advocates of proper,
and you try to be an advocate of common sense as well. The Gulf of Mexico is a vast place, and it just, of course, I got no words for it. It's extreme. We do try to conserve and preserve everything that's around us. We're always aware of the resource, but trying to make every boat in the Gulf of Mexico go 11 miles an hour, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't even know where to go with this one. It's they throw a lot of stuff out there that's extreme to one way, and the rules will probably end up somewhere in the middle on however it's done. Until I saw that email, I had never heard of this whale. So
I thought, okay, well, the guys will know it because I sure don't.
I had to look them up.
Yeah.
No idea.
I Googled it myself. I was like, what? We got this whales in the Gulf?
Whale.
But, I mean, what makes them so vulnerable to the surface? They do, there's a lot of water below the surface. The boats are just right on the top. Do the whales spend their whole lives, poking their head out of the water that they're going to get struck by a boat? But the fact that there's been no reported mortalities, that there's been, no evidence that this is needed, and to go and enact such an extreme rule, it's just a bit of overreach. And hopefully it's just one of those crazy things that's tossed out there, and then smarter people will voice their opinion and have some influence on the decision.
I just want to see Caleb go 11 miles an hour.
I can't believe y'all had to Google it. It's a new species of baleen whale. All right.
Oh God, here we go.
They're primarily in the northeastern Gulf. I
like your vocabulary. Sounds very official.
They live an average of 100 to 400 meters deep. Therefore,
like he's reading that off of his computer.
That's what I'm saying. It just sounds so official.
They're 42 feet long.
He often uses meters.
Therefore, yeah. Well, I just got done putting together some Japanese stuff. All right, so I'm in the metric system right now. Hey,
I thought you were Canadian.
Yeah. Hey, don't worry about it. I think you're more likely to hit a block of cocaine in the Gulf than one of these whales.
I think you're probably right.
If there's one of them and they average between 100 and 400 meters deep, I don't think there's a real good shot of smacking one of these things.
And why 11 miles per hour? How did they land on 11?
Apparently,
how fast they swim.
They can swim 12 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
their average speed is 12 miles an hour.
I mean, how many kilometers is that?
Are we talking about like a couple of square miles here? Or are we talking about like 100 square miles? Because it's not pointed at us; it's pointed at freighters. These guys that are running the deep draft and all this.
But it's still going to apply.
It's showing Pensacola, Florida to south of Tampa is their core area. And it's likely the entire Gulf of Mexico could eventually be declared habitat for them as it progresses.
Yeah.
So how would you like that? The entire Gulf of Mexico.
At the risk of taking some fire over this, we can go ahead and smack 51 of them and get this out of the way.
Oh my God! See, now there's one side, and then there's the extreme, Caleb.
Yeah, but look, I'm totally not Googling this, but these damn things apparently are recently discovered. Is like a new species, and we didn't even know they were
on your Google Chrome search engine.
Yeah, we didn't even know they were here, and now all of a sudden they're a priority.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Down in South Texas, there was and I never participated in this. I want to make that very clear. Never participated in this. But there was, I mean, for one instance, there's a critter called an ocelot. It was like for those y'all don't know, is like a great big long house cat that has spots like what has spots? A jaguar or something. Anyway, if they found one of these on your ranch, they could take your ranch and declare it a habitat for this critter. Now your ranch isn't yours anymore. And there was something called the 3 S's amongst the ranchers. It's called shoot, shovel, and shut up. You do not say that you saw one of these, because it was a thing for a while. And I mean, if I see a rice as well, I'm not going to say anything about it.
Well, like John just said, what's a rice's whale recipe?
Hey, I can guarantee you one thing too. When John Googled it, he did not spell it right, because I spelt it way different than that.
It's rice and gravy.
No rice and gravy. All right, let's get back to the bays, and let's get to some more stuff that's gonna help our listeners here. Let's talk wind. Caleb, I'm gonna start with you. You've been out. Dean's been out a lot. With the wind and the way that things are going right now, it's been we had such a lull for a long time of nice, beautiful wind. You can run the beachfront, you can go offshore in your bay boat and all that other stuff. What's the wind? Let's talk about the fishery right now. And what fish are doing? We talked about the heat. How are you handling the wind out on the water right now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, in my applications, I'm either going to the smaller size back lakes, or I'm going to rivers and creeks and stuff like that, where I'm protected for what I do. Like Dean said, if you're out drifting, as long as it's not white capping, you can make that work, right? So it's all in your application. Do you need to be out of the wind to do it or not? And then, like Dean was saying too, it cools stuff off a bit and puts some more oxygen in the water. So it's not a terrible thing.
Well, more specifically, because we've had this discussion about wind in general, I'm talking about like right now, and I think Dean might have some good insight on this. If we're saying because of the heat, deeper holes, edges, shadows, but it's windy and you're out on the water, that's kind of hard to work those back lakes and all that stuff because of the water temps. So what I'm saying is, for those of us that are going to be out on the bays, trying to get to some deeper water, trying to fish the drop-offs and such, how do you kind of make those two things mesh, wind and deeper holes?
Well, what it does is it limits your choices. Some places are going to be favorable in the wind, and then others are going to be, impossible to fish. And then a lot of it, it gets really muddy too, and it kind of churns up a little too much in some areas. Yeah. But the wind circulates water, on slack tide days, it will actually create some current in certain areas. But for me, it narrows down my choices. I mean, there's places that you aren't going to even attempt to go fish whenever it's 25 and up. But, down here in South Texas, we fish in the wind every day. You kind of get used to it. You look for a reprieve at this time of year so you can be a little more creative and, hit the jetties. We were going crazy on those kingfish, and then the switch just flipped on that one, and everything's sitting in the corner ready to go, but that hasn't even been an option. But I just pick specific shorelines that are going to be where I have access to them, and you're not going to be casting into the wind. You're not going to go and pick a spot where it's in your face where you're working that. You got to pick a spot where you got it at your back and you have those ingredients, where you can stand in knee deep or waist deep water and cast to 4 to 6 feet. And the thing about summertime, and when it starts blowing like that, it concentrates a lot of boats in those areas. It doesn't allow everybody to spread out. Monday through Wednesday and Thursday, it's not as congested. But when it does that, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, you just got to expect a lot of people in those areas that are fishable. So it's all part of the challenge on choosing your spot more than anything.
Yeah, it kind of puts you in a bad spot. You can't fish the shallows if it's that hot necessarily, unless you find what Caleb was talking about. And you're out in the open bay, maybe it's in deeper holes, and the wind's just blowing you through. It's kind of hard to kind of get those two things together. We're going to get to what would Scott do and what would Caleb do, but I do want to add just a couple of things. And the first one is I got a text during the show here from Micah Krolik, who's going to be part of the big feeding frenzy over at Watson's House of Ales. And you'll be able to see that on the website as soon. He said soon. He said he's going to extend the Father's Day sale till Thursday. So you got a couple more days for 30% off. We usually talk about the Bite Me 20 promo. That's 30% off. The other thing is you may have seen the video I posted on Wade Right with Tim Stamps showing all the things you can do with Wade Right. Of course, you have the Bite Me 20 discount there for the Bite Me combo package. Last thing before we get to what would Scott do and what would Caleb do, just to reiterate for anybody who may have jumped into the podcast, and we'll have more details, set your calendar now. We're going to need some RSVPs, and we'll post the link on the group page for August 12th at Watson's House of Ale. Going to be a big event, all kinds of giveaways and auctions, all to benefit Texas Boys Outdoors. We're going to have Madre slings from Wade Right. We're going to have some boats you can look at if you're interested from the Boatyard and Freedom Boats. To look at that parked out there. I don't know how much room we're going to have, but we're going to make the most of it. CCA Texas is going to be there, so we can talk that. We're going to have something of a little Q&A, I'm sure, but nothing too formal. Really just eat some food, drink some beer, have a good time, get pictures with my guys that are sitting across from me. We're going to have Lou's Reels giving away, Strike King Down South, South Jetty Coolers, Saltwater Soul, Power Pole. Really happy and proud for this. And that was my way of allowing the guys to look at all their apps and talk about what would Scott do and what would Caleb do. Caleb, I'm going to start with you. I know you've been doing a lot of baseball now, so maybe it's a good thing. You're going to have to really sort of dig into your knowledge. Let's say you're going out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. A little windy from what I can see on my app, but what would you do if you had to go out? We were just talking about the deep holes versus the water temps.
Man, I use folders on my phone. One's called fishing and one's called finance, and they're right beside each other. I hit the finance one on accident, and I'm pretty sure I can't afford to fish now.
You should have gone the other way.
Well, I'm headed to Fremont Street to take $5 pictures this weekend. Apparently,
yeah, you got to do your autographs and pictures.
It's man, we're in that generic old summertime southeast 15 to 20 this weekend. Start early. You want to wait on the edges. I still kind of be towards the drop off a little bit rather than way up on the edge, but not saying they won't be there. As the morning goes on, kind of work your way out towards it. And if you don't want to do that, man, get out there and make long drifts. It's the time of year, 4 or 5 feet of water in Matagorda, 8-10 feet of water in Galveston. Throw on a 1/4 ounce jig head and the plastic and let it get to the bottom and hop it around. See what happens.
Dean, Thursday, Friday on my app down in the lower coast looks pretty good. Gets a little sportier though on Saturday and Sunday. What are you going to do if you have to get out there?
Yeah, I was looking at that. We got a little brief pause in the wind for a couple days, but after that, it's going back to normal it's going back to abnormal for the next 10 days after that. But pretty much what we talked about earlier and what Caleb said, it's get up early. I get really fired up for the first 2 hours of the morning. I really try to inspire people to get up and, crank it up in the first 2 hours. And after that, we're just going to work real hard for the fish that we catch. Not really fishing much past. If I fish till noon right now, it's we probably fished an hour too long. But I'm going to try to wade a lot. I'm going to try to slow it down, hit the deeper spots, jump out of the boat. It's really much nicer standing in the water. It's not that survival heat whenever you're cooling off a little bit. So walking the edges, casting out, a lot of soft plastics, a lot of subsurface stuff. The top water bite's going to be very difficult. It's what we live for down here is drifting the sand holes and the grass beds, throwing top waters. But, that's on standby for the next couple weeks till something changes. So subsurface, slowing it down. The fish are lethargic, bumping the bottom. And, seeing how it works out. Yesterday was promising, though. I mean, I totally shifted gears from the get-go in the morning, and it paid off with some fish. So I'm going to stick with that until it gives up on me.
Scott, he was mentioning subsurface, and it's interesting because I don't throw spoons a lot. I probably should, but I have them. They're all rigged up, ready to go. You want to get subsurface? What kind of action would you expect on the lower middle coast there with some of those spoons at this time of year?
Yeah, kind of same thing Dean was talking about. You gotta figure out a way to slow down so you can fish thoroughly. The water's off color. I was down at Stephen Plant's place about an hour ago, and we were sitting on his porch, and from there you can see all the way across the Spiritu, and it is chocolate, man. It's nasty looking. All kind of rough waterways, and the water even in the intercoastal, where it's kind of protected, is still it's dirty in the intercoastal as well, where it normally stays pretty green. You're gonna have to find some protected water to throw lures, something that's got a little bit of clarity to it. And they keep saying it's south, but everything I feel at the house and down at Stephen's place and out on the water, it feels more southwest to me. They can keep calling it south all they want, but it's got some west in it, which usually means it's going to dirty up. That just makes finding that clearer water a little bit harder. So throwing spoons, man, if you can find something that's at least a little bit clear, that spoon might work out because it's going to have some flash to it. I know a couple buddies of mine have actually been on some fish in the back lakes and stuff, throwing top waters and doing okay, catching some reds back in the backwaters. But even the backwaters, the far back lakes are even getting dirty right now. So the biggest challenge right now, I think, is going to be finding some clean enough water to throw a lure into.
Yeah, that's kind of been a recurring theme today. You guys are the absolute best. Go ahead, Dean. Caleb.
I said while we're at it, congrats to Daniel for winning the Rojo Classic last weekend. While I was busy.
Saw that. Yeah.
Well,
you finally
while
got
I was
a good
away
partner.
watching baseball. Yeah, he's fishing with Chuck McKinney, the prop guy, and they did some pretty disciplined stuff, man.
That's big time.
I'm proud of him. He did something I wouldn't have done. I'll tell you that for sure. In fact, he called me and said he's going to do it. I told him I wouldn't do that, but he did it.
Yeah, he got with me and he asked me for some places. I gave him some places. He didn't even go look at them.
Yeah, he knew where not to go.
Yeah,
damn.
I think he's using you guys. I'm gonna see what they say and do the exact opposite.
he got. I mean, I haven't asked him about it specifically, but I'm gonna bet you he got down there and saw them sandbars. So you know what? I don't think so. If I had to guess.
Yeah, that'll do it for sure. You guys are the best. I'm gonna put you on the spot. We're all going to be there, right? August 12th. We're good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got it highlighted on the calendar.
All right. Bring your dogs and you might see some girls in bikinis. So actually, I don't know if it's a dog place or not. But we'll get all the details out
Steve
there.
Doesn't care if it's a dog place. He doesn't care
What's
at
that?
all. Steve doesn't care if it's a dog place at all.
Steve just has the run of the place no matter where he
it.
goes. No dogs allowed. But this is Steve. So
I have a picture of him and I sitting on a picnic table in a camping site, and there's a sign beside it that says absolutely no pets whatsoever. And me and Steve are like,
hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Steve can't read.
Well, we appreciate you guys. Gonna be a little windy, so hopefully everybody's gonna be able to at least on the weekend it will be able to catch some fish. Really happy to that off. Soak it all in like everybody else. You get out there, catch them up, be safe. We'll see you August 12th, and we'll see you next week. Another edition of the By Me Podcast. Talk to you next time.